A tiny moth slips out of your kitchen cabinet and lands on the ceiling. Don't chase it yet. Open the oldest bag of cereal, nuts, flour, or pet food you own, because that moth may never have flown into your house. You may have carried it through the front door yourself, hidden inside your groceries before it even had wings. And the adult you can see, it isn't eating your food. It doesn't feed at all. The animal that ruined the package is somewhere else. It's smaller, hungrier, and it leaves a trail so thin you may mistake it for dust. That changes the search completely. Most people react to pantry moths in the most satisfying possible way. Clap the adult out of the air, clean the little mark off the wall, and declare victory. Victory lasts until Tuesday. Then another moth appears, maybe two. One floats above the sink, another sits under a cabinet. A week later, there's one in the hallway, and now it feels as if the house is producing them from the paint. It isn't. The adults are evidence. To find the infestation, you have to work backward from the moth to a caterpillar, from the caterpillar to an egg, and from the egg to one forgotten package that may still look perfectly normal from the outside. The usual suspect is the Indianmeal moth, Plodia interpunctella, one of the most common insects found in stored food. The name sounds oddly specific. It doesn't mean the moth only eats Indian food, and it doesn't mean it politely waits for dinner. It will take cereal, rice, flour, pasta, nuts, dried fruit, chocolate, powdered milk, spices, herbal tea, birdseed, and dry pet food. In a pantry, that isn't a menu. It's basically the building. The adult is small, with wings that often look pale near the head and coppery brown toward the tips. When it rests, it folds them over its body like a narrow roof. It's easy to dismiss as a random outdoor moth that took a wrong turn. There's a quick way to avoid blaming the wrong insect. Fruit flies hover around produce and drains, darting in short, direct bursts. Clothes moths are more interested in animal fibers such as wool, fur, and feathers, and the adults tend to avoid bright open spaces. An Indian meal moth repeatedly appearing near dry food cabinets points the investigation toward the pantry. One moth proves little. Several appearing from the same part of the house over multiple days are a pattern. Watch where they settle in the evening. Check the upper corners of walls and cabinets. A cluster of sightings can narrow the search before you open every box in the kitchen. But this one usually stays close to stored food, because its adult life has a single, urgent job: reproduce before the clock runs out. An adult may live only about 1 or 2 weeks. It doesn't spend that time chewing through crackers. It doesn't need lunch. Soon after emerging, males begin searching for females, and a female can place hundreds of eggs on or near food, often around 200 to 400 across her short life. The eggs are tiny, less than half a millimeter long. On a white shelf, they disappear. On flour, oats, or crushed nuts, forget it. You would have better luck finding 1 grain of salt that owes you money. Within days, a larva hatches. At first, it's so small that the seam of a cardboard box can feel like an open garage door. It may slip through gaps around folded packaging, loose lids, thin paper, or tiny imperfections you would never consider an entrance. That sealed-looking bag is not always proof that the food was safe. Sometimes the egg was already there before you bought it. Sometimes a larva reached the package later through a weak seam. Either way, a plastic clip is not Fort Knox. Then feeding begins. The larva has working mandibles, and it uses them constantly. It breaks off particles, chews, grows, sheds its skin, and repeats. The adult moth gets blamed because it's visible. The caterpillar does the damage because it's built like a tiny eating machine with no respect for expiration dates. Its color can change with what it eats. Many are creamy white, but some look faintly pink, yellowish, or greenish. The darker head capsule is often the easiest feature to notice. At full size, the larva is far more obvious than the egg, yet still small enough to vanish against rice, oatmeal, or a folded paper seam. It molts several times as it grows. Each old skin can remain in the food besides silk and droppings, which is why removing the one larva you spotted does not rescue the package. The visible animal is only one ingredient in the contamination. If a moth on the ceiling has already turned into a grocery investigation, hit subscribe. The next clue explains why an infested package can feel wrong before you see a single larva. Watch what happens as the caterpillar moves through food. From just beneath its mouth, it releases silk. A nearly invisible thread follows behind it through the cereal or flour. One thread becomes many. Food particles catch in it. So do shed skins, droppings, and crumbs. The result doesn't always look alive. That's what makes it easy to miss. You pour oats into a bowl, and a few flakes hang together in a loose clump. A strand stretches from the bag to the scoop. Nuts near the corner of a package seem wrapped in a faint gray film. Flour forms little webbed islands that don't break apart normally. That silk is one of the best clues you have. It also explains a strange moment people often notice before they know what they're seeing. You tilt a container, expecting the contents to slide, but a patch stays attached to the wall. Or one flake of cereal rises with the scoop, followed by another, then another, connected by threads too fine to see head-on. The pantry has started behaving like a spider web, except no spider made it. The larva may eat only a small part of the product, yet its webbing can spread through much more of it. Add cast skins and frass, the polite scientific word for insect poop, and suddenly an entire bag is contaminated by an animal thinner than a shoelace. It gets worse in food with a rough texture. Webbing disappears among oats, seeds, grain dust, or kibble. You may not notice it until the material sticks to the inside of the bag, as if someone sprayed the contents with a very weak glue. Now comes the clue that sends most pantry searches in the wrong direction. The mature larva often leaves the food. Yes, leaves. After spending weeks eating inside a package, it crawls away to find a protected place to pupate. It can move across shelves, climb walls, squeeze into screw holes, hide behind trim, or settle where the wall meets the ceiling. Some wander surprisingly far from the original food, so the little caterpillar above the pantry door may not have come from the box directly below it. The cocoon behind a picture frame may have started in birdseed across the room. The moth in your bedroom does not prove there is a secret bag of rice under the bed. Probably. This wandering stage is why infestations feel supernatural. You throw away the obvious cereal box, wipe the shelf, and then adults keep appearing. What you're seeing may be the last group of larvae that already left the food before cleanup. They're finishing development in cracks you didn't know were part of the nursery. Inside a thin cocoon, the larva becomes a pupa. The moving, feeding body is rebuilt into a winged adult. Later, the pupal case splits and a moth pushes out, expands its wings, and starts searching for a mate. No breakfast, straight to dating. The female releases a chemical signal called a sex pheromone. A male can detect it with receptors on his antenna and follow it through the air. That private signal is useful to the moth, and useful to us, because it can be copied inside a sticky trap. This is where another completely reasonable plan goes wrong. You hang a pantry moth trap. By morning, a male is stuck to it. 2 days later, there are 6. The trap looks productive, and emotionally, it is wonderful. A tiny wall of consequences. But the trap is a monitor, not a reset button. Most pantry moth traps lure males. They can show that adults are active and help you track whether numbers are falling. They do not remove the eggs, the feeding larva, or the hidden package producing them. A female that already mated can continue laying eggs, while the trap gives you the warm glow of administrative progress. It caught part of the dating pool. It did not find the nursery. There is another limit. A trap full of moths cannot tell you which package produced them. Air currents carry pheromone through a room, and wandering adults can approach from nearby cupboards, garages, or utility spaces. The trap answers one question. Are male pantry moths active here? It does not answer the question that matters most. What are the larvae eating? If you like household mysteries where the obvious fix catches the wrong part of the problem, subscribe now. We still have to locate the package that started this, and the most obvious cupboard may be innocent. Start with the place where you see the most adults, but don't stop there. Search by food type, age, and neglect. Old dry goods come first. Check flour, cereal, rice, pasta, baking mixes, nuts, seeds, dried fruit, chocolate, spices, and tea. Don't just glance at the front. Lift the bag, open the inner liner. Look along folds and corners where food dust collects. You're hunting for webbing, clumps, pale larvae with darker heads, cast skins, small cocoons, or holes around weak packaging. Use a flashlight from the side. Fine silk catches light better at an angle. If those shelves are clean, widen the search. The source may be a bag of dog food in the laundry room, cat treats in a drawer, birdseed in the garage, nuts stored for baking. A box of herbal tea nobody likes but everybody feels guilty throwing away. Dried corn in a decorative fall arrangement can support pantry pests too. Spices deserve special suspicion because they're opened briefly, used slowly, and then pushed behind newer jars. So do baking ingredients bought for one recipe 9 months ago. Pantry moths don't care that the expensive bag of almonds was organic, imported, or saved for a special occasion. To a larva, premium packaging is just housing with snacks included, and occasionally the food was never yours. Rodents sometimes cache seeds or dry pet food inside walls, ceilings, cabinets, or forgotten corners. If moths continue despite a careful pantry cleanup, hidden stored material may be feeding them somewhere you cannot see. That's when the insect stops being merely a pantry problem and becomes a clue to inspect the structure more closely. The best source is often the item that has been sitting longest. Fresh groceries get handled. Forgotten groceries become real estate. Suppose you find it, an old bag of walnuts pushed behind a mixing bowl. The top looks closed. Inside, the nuts are tied together by silk. A larva moves slowly along the fold, almost the same color as the food. That one bag can explain moths across several rooms. But before throwing away everything you own, slow down. Pantry moths spread, but panic is expensive. Inspect items one by one. If a product shows larvae, webbing, cast skins, or clear contamination, seal it before carrying it through the house and discard it outside. If you're unsure about a package, isolate it in a clear, tightly closed container and watch it. That keeps any emerging adults from spreading while giving you a chance to see silk, larvae, or moths appear. Label it with the date, because nobody remembers which suspicious bag of rice began temporary observation 3 weeks ago. Unopened does not mean uninfested. Check glued cardboard flaps, folded bag seams, and the space under lids. The eggs can be almost impossible to see, so later evidence, webbing, clumps, larvae, and emergence, is far more useful. Then empty the shelf and vacuum the corners, peg holes, seams, and the narrow gap where shelving meets the wall. Those places matter because wandering larvae select protected edges for pupation. Empty the vacuum promptly so the cleanup device doesn't become a moth relocation service. Wipe away remaining crumbs and residue. For food storage areas, physical removal matters more than spraying random chemicals around packages. Household insecticides are generally a poor choice where food is stored, and killing one exposed adult never reaches the life stages inside the product. When the pantry is clean, move vulnerable dry foods into containers with tight-fitting lids. Clear, rigid containers help because you can see clumping or webbing without reopening everything. They also isolate the damage. If one new package arrived with eggs already inside, the infestation stays in that container instead of turning the entire shelf into a shared apartment. Don't forget the pet food. People will transfer expensive flour into matching glass jars, label every lid, and then leave a 20-pound bag of kibble open 3 feet away. The moth appreciates the interior design. Over the next few weeks, keep watching. A trap can help monitor adults, but the meaningful question is whether sightings decline after the source is removed. A few late moths may still emerge from pupae, hidden away from the food. A continuing stream means something edible remains. This is also why moving food from one cabinet to another can spread the problem. A wandering larva can hitch a ride on the outside of a box, and an infested package can seed a clean shelf before anyone opens it. Clean containers first, then move the food. Otherwise, the pantry reorganization becomes free public transportation. Temperature changes the schedule. In warm indoor conditions, the life cycle can move quickly. Cooler temperatures or poorer food can stretch development for months. That's why waiting 3 quiet days is not enough to declare the case closed. Now return to the first moth on the ceiling. It looked like the intruder. In reality, the invasion may have entered weeks earlier as an egg on a food product, then spent its damaging stage hidden inside a package. By the time the adult appeared, the meal was over. The visible moth was the final stage of a story already happening behind the cabinet door. That gives you a much better response than swinging a towel at the ceiling. Catch the adult if you can. Then inspect the oldest dry foods, follow the silk, check beyond the pantry, and remember that the larva may have walked away from the source before becoming a moth. The location of the flyer tells you where to begin, not where to end. Subscribe for the next creature hiding inside an ordinary home, and tell me in the comments if you've dealt with pantry moths Where did you finally find the source? Flour, nuts, pet food, bird seed, or something nobody thought to check?